Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the DM Roundtable for August 2019. This is a chance for patrons and I to get together and discuss topics in tabletop RPGs. By sharing our ideas, thoughts, and experiences, we can all become better DMs. The DM Roundtable discussions are open to all patrons at every level of patreon.com/roguewatson. You don't even have to be an active participant. You can jump in here and lurk to your heart's content, and we are glad to have you. Shout out to Platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Crazy Pat, Nick, and Rivzung, and Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marco Stead, Vicente Gilberto, Sean aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. This month's topic, as determined by the poll on the Patreon page, is loot, including magical equipment, treasures, artifacts, potions, whatever. How do we reward loot? How much or little do we use? What resources do we utilize, if any, and how do we balance it? Joining me for this month's DM Roundtable, we have Adam, Sean,
Hello.
Nick,
Howdy.
and Marcos.
What's going on?
And I believe Sean was sick last week. Marcos is nursing a wisdom save right now. Not wisdom save. You need a wisdom save.
Oh,
Nursing
man,
wisdom
I need to
teeth
make
removal.
one.
So please send all your blessed spells this way. So with loot, something I've mentioned a lot whenever I talk about 5th edition is something I lament about is I feel like 5th edition downplays loot compared to previous editions and compared to a lot of RPGs, because I think it baked a lot of that power directly into the player classes themselves, which I think in a lot of ways that helps kind of level the playing field, because before there were always, like a fighter was always a lot more of a loot-based class. Like you really needed a lot of magical equipment, whereas a wizard, you've got spells. So I think having, fighters have baked-in abilities into those classes as you level up helps level the playing field. But on the other end, loot is fun, and players like getting loot. Even if you're a party of evil players, good players, lawful players, whatever you are, everybody likes loot. But 5th edition is a lot less loot focused. So how do we deal with that? Adam, let's start with you to put you on the spot. How do you feel about loot in 5th edition in general?
I really enjoy using loot, and I think that's one of the things I'd rather give my players some extra cool stuff, like maybe magical items and stuff like that, and ramp up the encounters a little bit to kind of compensate, because I think it makes the game more fun. I especially think it makes it more fun when you throw loot out there that can be used by a lot of people, because then you have good discussions about who it's best for and stuff like that. So I tend to use more loot probably than maybe other people do, but then again, I try to make sure I scale up the encounter so the loot isn't OP and steamrolling everything. So,
And that's a good springboard for how do we balance loot. Does anybody have any good tips for using magical equipment and giving your players magical equipment that's not going to tip things too far into their favor? Or do you do like Adam does and just buff everything up?
I say set a value to it. Like if you have a spell book, like I'm playing as a Kenku druid right now in Waterdeep, and so spells are useless to me. But if I pick one up, you could say, all right, if you sell this, just some enormous amount, exorbitant, like 500 gold for this. But if my druid or cleric friend sells it or uses it, it's only worth 100 gold, something like that, where it's I think maybe not that extreme, but something of that nature where it's more valuable to you as a player who's not going to use it, or compensation like that.
When you give loot out, do you always try to make sure one of your players can use it? In other words, if you have so for my party in Tomb of Annihilation right now, weirdly enough, armor is a thing. So I'm prepping like Wormheart Mine right now, and obviously they can get stuff like, Dwarven made armor. And I went through all my player character sheets and realized none of them wear heavy armor. So giving them, a suit of plate mail just isn't going to be very exciting. Now, obviously, they can take that armor and sell it because we don't really do encumbrance stuff, but that's not nearly as interesting or fun as being able to loot something that you can actually use. So, in other words, do you always do something that would just make sense and doesn't really matter what they can use, or do you always try to tailor magic items that they can specifically that they would be excited about? I guess.
I always try to tailor, honestly. And my excuse for that has always been magic items will tailor themselves to the person. If
Right.
you have, say, like a frost giant has a ring of, you know, you know, far seeing or something, his finger is about as thick around as your thigh. So that ring has to stretch to fit his finger. When you attune to it, it shrinks to fit your finger. Sometimes you know, maybe it's just me trying to make things fit when they shouldn't. But if whatever, if it had pre-called for, like you say, a magical set of plate armor, you know, as they approach the box to open it, I can easily say, oh, it senses somebody about to pick it up. It changes to whatever, it magics itself into something that you can use,
Okay.
as opposed to just being a, magical set of plate mail. Um, if you're taking off a dead body, that'd be different because it'd still be attuned to that person. But if it's just sitting there, you know, in a box not being used, I'm more than happy to say, yeah, it's studded leather.
That might have to do with the frequency of magical items too, because if you're creating like a Diablo style universe where magic items just fall like candy out of every monster they defeat, then obviously you can just throw whatever you want out there and then they'll, sell whatever they don't need and keep the rest. But if you're making maybe a lower magic world or make it so magic items are a really special thing, then obviously you want your players to use those items because that's why you're putting them in the world, I would expect.
Yeah, and I always try to tailor them as well to what the players are doing in terms. I usually will wait a couple of sessions, a couple of levels till they're level 3 or 4, because at that point I've got a really good feel of how they like to play their character, how they like to do this and do that. One of my characters in the game that I'm running right now is a Warforged barbarian, and so I decided to put a couple Warforged enemies that he kind of came from, and essentially gave them an NPC that knows how to work on various Warforged components. So whenever they defeat a Warforged enemy, they'll take it to him, and that's how he gets his magic gear, where the others will get like a magic sword or something like that.
I like that idea. Yeah, I did. So one of the personal quests for one of my players is kind of based on Monster Hunter, where you have to defeat a bunch of monsters out in the wild, and then you can combine those, various monster guts parts somehow into some kind of magical item that they can then use. And of course, those items are then tailored specifically to that character. It's sort of a in-game crafting universe that doesn't actually involve any skill checks. It's just basically story related. But how do you guys feel about using the existing resources for loot versus making up your own items? Because I'm looking through the Dungeon Master's Guide right now. I just have it flipped open, and I realize that 90% of the time when I crack this book open, it's to look at the magic items, because there are like 50 or 60 pages worth of magic items in here, and they're pretty damn solid for the most part. There's some really good ideas, and even if you don't want to use the thing that's exactly in here, you can take the idea here and adapt it to something else. So I'm curious, how much do all of you use a resource like this, or maybe something on the DM's Guild or something, versus do you rather make something up yourself?
I tend to use that as kind of like a base resource and kind of get an idea of what kind of item I want, but then I usually kind of tweak it. But I would say I probably tweak almost every single magic item that's of significance to kind of fit one of the party members at least. So I think it's good to use as like a. But
So,
I feel like
It's like a resource.
Yeah, give me some specific anecdotes. I'm curious to see like which ones that you looked at and said, okay, this could work, but I need to change this.
So like I have a homebrew game where I have a wizard, and I know that this character really enjoys using the different kind of movement spells like teleport and Misty Step and stuff like that. And so I had a magic item that they looted off a character, and it was basically just like a +1 quarterstaff, and you could cast Misty Step once per day, once per short rest. So just like, just kind of out and saying, oh, I feel like they would really enjoy this item, and so stuff like that.
So let them do what they're doing just more often, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely use the DMs. I like using the magic items table. Oh, sorry, the magic table, the magic item table, treasure table. That's what I mainly use when I'm looking at the DMG.
Is that the one that specifically is like roll on this to determine which item? Okay.
Yeah, I have it tabbed specifically for magic table, page 136 DMG.
Nice.
And this is mainly for like if we're doing like a hex crawl part of the game. And there's like random encounters, as opposed to tailoring the items that they get specifically from each one of those encounters. I'll just do something from one of these tables to see what those people had on them.
Okay.
Or whatever monster, if they can track it back to its lair, what might be in the lair of the owlbears or something.
That's kind of the opposite of then what Adam was talking about. Is he tailors stuff specifically, whereas you do the straight up like random table roll? I guess
I only tailor it for like main quests,
Okay.
because I definitely do love the hey, you're in town, you pick up all the little question marks that you can.
That's right.
And usually at the end of those question marks will be tailored loot to them.
Okay.
At least one piece that's like kind of tailored for them. So like kind of like how you have with George and his quest to get those different animal pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I do something like that too, where it's like you want to find the truth of the ninth eye in the long blue sky. If you happen to get to the top of the long blue sky and you find the ninth eye, you get a fucking good item. You dedicated a lot of sessions to find that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be something tailored, as opposed to you stumbled across owlbears who are hungry. You kill them, go back to their lair. Oh, you find the 10th eye of Agamemnon.
Right.
No, you just find the freaking plate mail that got half of it ripped, and like a scroll case that didn't get used.
And that's the difference between like looting something off a monster and then having it appear as that classic like RPG quest reward, where it's like, here's the items that you can have. But in a lot of games, like even like a Warcraft or a Divinity Original Sin or something, it gives you choices of like which items you want. Whereas as DMs, we have to kind of just try to figure out what item our players best want, I think. Is there ever come up in a situation where you offer your player choices because you're maybe not sure, or maybe you want to like custom stock a magic vendor or something?
No, not me personally, but like the DM has said that. They're like, okay, I can either give you like this hookup on this armor, whether it's like a shield or like breastplate, or this really awesome bow / rapier sword thing. So it's like, do you want to go with defense or offense? And then just say, okay, we're going to pick one of these two. And so that's how the options would go for us. Just trying to, I guess, gauge on if we're going to be more passive or aggressive on the upcoming endeavor.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to do the choice option there as well. Like going back to the previous example with the Warforged, the one upgrade that they had, basically I had the scientist technician essentially give him a choice. Is like you can either have an upgrade to the eyes, which will essentially give you dark vision. You can have I can take some of the plating, which will increase your AC by 1, or we could put this module in your arm that the axe kind of hooks into, which can once per turn do a little bit of lightning damage.
It's like some Shadowrun stuff you got going on with the body modifications.
But that's with the icon that he has for his Warforged, he's more machine than man, so to speak. So I have that option. And he, being the fact that he's a Warforged barbarian, the running joke is if there's a locked door, he's just going to Kool-Aid Man his way through it.
Nice. Just Deus Ex style. Has there ever been a case where you have... this is open to anybody. given an item to a player, a custom item, and you realized later on that you made a big mistake and that it was too powerful. Like, for whatever reason, it overpowered an encounter, or the player relied on it too much, or it solved too many problems. Has there ever been a case of a overpowered custom magic item that you regretted?
Like,
Never
like
had
if you-
that happen, but it
Yeah,
always worries me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had that happen either.
I mean, if we just gave a normal human a flaming sword and just said, "Go off into the world,"
Yeah.
I think the only time I ever got close was when I rolled on a table, because I rolled public,
Yeah.
and a guy rolled for defender,
Ooh.
+3 legendary,
Yeah.
legendary sword. He got that, and he squealed. He squealed like a little girl, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Well,
actually,
guy opens up, beam of light comes down, and from the heavens descends a ethereal, beautiful angel. In her arms, she holds out to you, defender.
Jeez.
And I mean, it definitely gave him an edge, but it got to the point where like he ruined it for himself because he was always in the tavern. Hey, look at this sword that I got. An angel gave it. He woke up one morning and it was gone.
Oh damn! That's terrible.
Yep. They had a whole campaign about finding his sword.
Oh man. Okay. I was gonna ask, like, how do you then deal with it? And I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. You just steal it.
Yeah,
from him.
he. I mean, if he had just kept it, he'd been pious. If he just kept it to himself, used it to fight his enemies, and kept it sheathed, it probably wouldn't have been a problem. But he was, failed his con check on his alcohol that night.
And that's,
And yeah,
in
he
fifth
was gone the
edition,
next day.
like, because there's a thing, what is it, proficiency bonus? Like, that wasn't a thing in previous editions. So, having like a +1 sword or a +2 sword was like basically a requirement as you leveled up in previous editions of D&D. At least in like 3rd edition, and then I think that evolved into Pathfinder. It was very much a loot-based game, which I don't want to say that disparagingly, but in a fun way. You get all this loot, and that was part of your power level. Whereas here, you get a +3 sword, and it's fucking bananas crazy powerful because you've already got, by that time, probably a +4 or +5 built into your character. So that's incredible power.
Yeah, the +3 damage isn't as beneficial, but that +3 to
That
attack
+3 to
is
hit.
huge.
Yeah, he had like
Yes.
a +13 to hit.
Jesus.
He did not miss very often.
Yeah. That one you can also
Because
change your armor
even
class.
like CR20 enemies only have an AC of like 20, 21. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. What about? I know magic items are obviously the more exciting thing to talk about, but what about like just treasure loot? Like, how do you all handle the often crazy economy of adventurers who could realistically
I-
retire after their first adventure and be
I
richer than the
count.
richest kings?
No, I keep track of the fucking gold flow in my game. that makes me so upset when I hear people walking around with like 7,000 gold
Right.
pieces. One gold piece is about $145 USD. One gold piece is $145. I've done the math on it.
All right,
So
I'll trust you on that.
imagine having 7,000 of that in your
Right.
pocket. Like, I understand adventuring.
Like,
being
why are you going into
dangerous.
crypts with liches and shit? You could just fucking buy an island and
Yes.
retire at that point.
There is the only reason why I think it works is because the players don't understand how much money they have. They don't
All
understand
adventurers
how
are
much
really
actual.
really bad with money.
It kills me. So yes, like they're always like, well, what? Only 10 gold? What do you mean you're only giving us 50 gold? I'm like, dude,
That's this
50
person's
gold
life savings.
is a lot of money. This is all the person this money will make their entire lifetime. And you throw this away at the tavern, just throwing it in the air. Why do you think you have people stealing your stuff? Why do you think people are stalking you in every town? You're walking around with 3,000 gold. Invest in something. Buy a town. Buy a bank. Do something with your
Buy the
goddamn money,
town,
please.
Especially since 7,000 gold is like 140 pounds.
Oh yeah, but I mean, they play for Vogue, so they count as a size larger for care and stuff. So they're the pack mule. But I mean, still though, it's like literally 7,000 gold pieces on a person would be like a duffel bag, like multiple duffel bags full of gold.
Yeah.
In addition
Dude,
to all of your other stuff that you're carrying, you'd be jingling around. You want to make
They-
a sell check? Make
they
it
had
at,
Time
make
Lord
it at minus
satchels.
20.
It's fine.
You have a minus 20 to this check.
Like they're just running and stuff. It's like, God. Yeah, I actually made that a point one time ago. All right, so we have 30 speed, right? Well, I'm burdened by, X amount of armor and all of this thing, and I'm injured. So, is there anything that y'all ever do to diminish that? Like your speed? Like to only go 20 or 25 or something? Because of your overburdened loot?
Well, I really only do encumbrance when it comes into play. Like I definitely don't count individual pounds and do all the math for like heavy push load but like if they want to carry a freaking statue on their back, it's like
Right.
you want to carry 7,000 gold? What do you have that? I mean, I don't know if you can do that.
Right.
But I usually
Okay.
don't get too technical with it, just because it slows down the game in a way that people don't like.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm the
what
same. I
I
definitely keep track of gold too, and I definitely don't give a whole lot of gold just for kind of random looting of bodies, because I feel the same way. I feel like it shouldn't be rolling around with thousands of gold. It should be a pretty minimal thing.
This might be going off topic, but does anybody do any kind of a money sink in their game in order to
Yes.
create a way for players to actually spend money
Yes.
or like taxes? So real quick, the one that I use obviously is to heal yourself from a lingering injury. So in my game, if players hit 0 hit points, they have a chance of receiving a is it lingering injury or lasting injury, whatever one that can, it's like a crippled limb or a missing eye or something, and it costs hundreds of gold to be able to heal that at a town. So that's kind of the money sink that we have, as well as players just seem to want to buy health potions all the time, so I have to limit like how many they can actually buy. But because a lot of players don't see gold as anything other than a method of which to increase their combat survivability and power, which kind of makes sense if you look at it as more of a video game thing, and don't really want to do gold with investing in don't create D&D as a world, but instead of like a combat simulator, which is fine. I think there are different ways to play the game.
Lingering injury, aka the Mannix table.
The max
Yeah. Yes. No, I have a folder. Like I have this big binder that specifically is for the bigger. I call it the bigger picture. But yeah, the thing I love about D&D is making it feel like a real world, which is why I care so much about gold running around.
Right.
And it depends on the group, but most times people are like, yeah, no, this makes sense. If you go into a town and spend 10, just ridiculous amounts of gold, suddenly the prices for everything go up. And it's like, oh, the adventurers are in town. The health potions go for 10 times more because we know they're going to be able to afford it. You get the adventure prices out instead.
like an auction
The other
house system.
thing, the other thing that I tend to do with merchants is I kind of do I think it was Fallout that did this, where whenever you would go to like buy or sell something, they only had so much money that they could buy stuff
Yes.
with. So if you have 500 gold worth of loot and they've only got 50 gold on them, they're only going to be able to give you 50 gold for what you got.
Yeah.
And that's for the
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yep. If you want to do it like that, you got to go to the gym, the gem cutter, got to buy some gems, exchange those gems for gold, and go to the person who accepts those gems and sell that, and then just keep breaking it down. But funny thing about loot is that the main thing I like to do is allow for my players to craft items. Kind of like how you were talking about the thing with George. But it's like, say like the fighter wants a special shield that lets them don and doff it quicker using a bonus action as opposed to a regular action. There was I forget where I had found some rules about how to craft items, mundane or magical, and that's one thing I use to let them sink their money in, is trying to craft personal magic items, doing the correct carousing to find whatever alchemist or engineer or magician that they need, spending a little bit more money, trying to getting on their good graces, maybe doing a quest for them to earn their trust.
Did Xanathars
then-
have something like that? Because that does sound familiar.
Possibly, I'd have to go back to my book to see where I found it from exactly. But like, I love doing that.
Yeah.
Letting the mage enchant their hat to be able to, alleviate some of the weight of their spells by being able to cast a spell through that or something.
I like that
Or
idea a lot. Yeah.
making it so that their focus and their component pouch are like merged together, and they'd be able to purchase more components through talking to said device or whatever, whatever their imagination can take, because it gets the person much more invested, because every table has the person that's just there to just kind of be there. And this can kind of get them into it a lot more if they're like, wait a second, I like building stuff. Hold on, what do I do to make like plate armor that like can be nice and silent? Oh, you got to do this, and this. You would start here and work your way to it.
Have like
And that's a really good
mini
money
quest.
sink as well.
Yeah, something that I haven't done it in a while, but back when I played Pathfinder, the first edition, because crafting is actually kind of built into the role system for that one. And I would do something because there's an actual craft skill in that version. And I would essentially take a look at the item that they wanted, what its value was, and then kind of make an arbitrary number like 200 as an example. And then whenever they do a craft check, let's say they do a craft check and it's enough for the initial pass and they roll, say, a 25. Well, I take the 25 from that 200, so they need 175 more to have the item finished. So there's an actual progress you can actually see.
Okay. That's a cool idea. I like that a lot because that gives you a chance for players to be more, to have skills factor into it, but also as a money sink to change money into items, which I feel like a lot of D&D groups look at money as like, this is a nice thing, but what I really want is like a cool sword or something. And that's a way to just transform that gold. Yeah.
Not even to mention if Matt Colville's new book was Stronghold, and that book you put out earlier this year goes over managing and owning a castle and strongholds. Like, I want to do something like that when I do this into Avernus that comes out later.
Like a player base.
Yeah, exactly. So that way, if they're interested, that'd be an option. Okay, you guys are level 10, pretty strong. You have a good following. Is that something you're interested in? I mean, the king already is like, whatever you want, you can have. Is that something you want to do?
That's something I would definitely explore if I had a more conventional campaign that wasn't like people trap-sizing through a jungle, but if it was like, you're in a region and you're doing stuff around there, I think having a player base is a really cool idea. And a lot of my favorite video games do the concept of you have your own headquarters, and your headquarters almost kind of levels up like you all do as you do things out in the world, and it does provide a really smart and fun money sink where you can put money into like renovating different areas, and there's people you can hire, and there's taxes that have to be paid, but then you get all these benefits of and you can even have it be mechanical benefits, like give people buffs for like resting in certain rooms or be able to find knowledge in the library wing they build or whatever. So yeah, I like that concept quite a bit of having the player base as kind of a piece of sort of a giant piece of loot that can kind of level up with the players.
It kind of is, yeah. It's the biggest loot.
The biggest loot.
I mean, everybody wants their wizard castle.
It's true.
Have you ever given... So, to go back to what I was fishing at with the giving somebody a magic item that they've never... Or that is horribly overpowered, I feel like the closest we got to... I don't know if I've done it off the top of my head, but I think I recall that in Storm King's Thunder, who's Reese's character? Tim had that blasting hammer that just made that gigantic explosion.
Oh yeah.
And
I am Tim.
And Chris tried to give it a limited use by having it cost a gem each time, but of course adventurers get fucking gems all the time, and we never sold them because we had a ton of money, as we discussed with the way money works in D&D. So he would just clock that gem in there each time and just use that giant blasting hammer.
You guys are on the friggin' island hideout, and everybody was sleeping. He just walks in. Hi guys, I'm Tim.
Hulk smashes into it.
Oh god, I remember that.
That was the one thing. 'Cause I remember a few times Chris was like, because we'd talk after D&D a lot of times, he'd be like, "Oh God, I can't believe he's using this damn thing all the time." But that is a worry that I have about using stuff, because you want to give stuff, you want to walk that line between giving players an item that they're going to be excited about and they're going to want to use without it. Without having the item own you, basically, and have it kind of take over and be the thing that's going to be too powerful and that they're going to be all about. I think that's a really tricky line to walk. And the other thing is you got to be worried about is giving somebody an item that you as a DM think is really cool and you're excited about it, and then the player never uses it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We had that happen. Like there was this cloak of invisibility, but it kind of worked in the invisible way where if you had it on, you thought you were invisible, but everyone else could see you. So you could not convince them otherwise.
No.
And so we were like, well, what if we gave this to so we gave it to a new person who came into the game literally one session in, and we're like, oh, that's okay, we're level 1. We literally went to the tavern, came back, and we're like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. So we're like, do you want this invisibility cloak? But there's a catch. He's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I want this. And so we're like, if you roll this wrong, you're gonna get stuck with the same thing too. He's like, oh dang. So he has this invisibility cloak that does not work, that he believes works 100%. So even though he has to sneak around, it does not. Like, it helps a little, but not enough that it works as an invisibility cloak. So we were thinking, what if we put this on the bad guy? Like, if he's trying to run away and it's some sort of wraith or something, or big huge monster, and we're like, if we give this cloak to this bad guy and he thinks he's invisible, we can just hide, right? And we're like, I don't know, what would the DM do? Because we were trying to, the four of us outside of our DM knowing, we were like, what would she do if we did this? And it's like, because it's a really good thing, because it kind of works, like it helps with stealth, but not really. And so we're like, we should use this for evil, because it might be really powerful. Do you know what I mean?
I wonder if that's an example of an item that they put in because for level 1 specifically, like to take an item from like established magic item and then make it worse, almost in a funny way for like level 1. Yeah.
100% ineffectual, but it's just funny,
Yeah. I think Xanathar's actually added some items like that too. It's like, here's a cloak that always stays clean, or just some kind of bullshit items you can give people.
Oh man, yeah.
Because specifically level 1, because you're supposed to be able to have common. You're supposed to be able to have common magic items, right? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Right.
And there were none in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so they added a bunch in Xanathar specifically that were just kind of goofy, silly stuff, but it's still fun for people to loot. That's not just the same. Hey, you find gold, or you find a malachite, or whatever it is.
Right. I mean, if you just gave a level 1 whatever druid or cleric a cloak of invisibility, you're like, well, this guy's just gonna run invisible forever. So what's the point? Yeah. So that's why they made that little hitch in there. She's like, well, I'll give it to you, but it doesn't work. And you're like, well, take it.
All right, work.
Of course.
I was once given a joke item very similar to that. We were kind of mid-second tier, and the GM had given my character this +1 radiant sword, but it was an intelligent magic item, and it was kind of possessed by the soul of this really rude lord. So every time you missed, it would insult the crap out of you. Learn to swing me, you moron.
That sounds great.
Oh, I hate those verbal
There needs to be
swords.
more talking weapons. Every
Oh,
campaign
man.
needs one.
We have a screaming sword in there. I'm like, I look at my he's Hellboy's friend, just this aquatic being that it just exists. He's like an elemental, and he has this screaming sword. I'm like, I look straight at him, like, dude, I swear, Abraham, if you pull out that sword. He's like, yeah, but we're in the middle of a cavern. Nobody can see me and him. We're two, ranger druid, and I was like, we're fine. Just don't. But it lights up. Oh man, I hate you. It lights up and it yells. Just I hate every bit of you right now. So I mean,
great.
I think it's fun. It's great for the game. It's horrible for the campaign. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I have a hate-love relationship for it. So
Does
it has its
anybody
purpose.
have any experience with cursed items? So to kind of piggyback off maybe taking an item for lower level people and making it maybe weaker or sillier in a way, what if you took a powerful item but twisted some kind of a curse or flaw into it in order to balance it? Nobody's used curses?
Oh, I've used them several times, and those types of cursed items can actually make for nice little campaign sidetracks. It's like, okay, we've got this powerful item. It's really dangerous, but if we go to this one place and do this one thing, we can basically get the benefit without the negative. So I think that's something we should do.
My characters tend to stay away from curses because of whatever morale, ethical, religious, whatever their character types. Like they're very spiritual. I don't know how you'd put it, but they're like, oh, it's cursed. Yeah, I ain't touching it, type of thing.
That's generally a good rule.
Yeah, and so I think all of the characters that I've ever built, whether they're sneaky little pirate thieving people or somehow good all the way, it's like they always are one-sided of like they believe so much in the religion that's their one divinity, that's their one thought, and then whatever, it's all hocus pocus and stuff.
And sometimes I will freely mess with my players. Like they find this magic sword and they'll be like, "All right, I'm going to pick it up with your bare hand." And nothing happens.
Make everybody for like several sessions afterwards be very paranoid.
Yeah, I had a bad, going with the curse sword as a DM with a player that kind of turned me off of him for altogether.
Oh no!
Remember how I told you about the individual who leans back, crosses his arms, and just like, well, I guess I'm fucking done then.
Yep.
You're just gonna play my character now. I'm like, no, this is a challenge. No, you just roll. You just play my character.
No.
I'm done. Nothing for me to do. I'm like, you know, it's not like that. You know, we can look at it from this way. So I just don't mess with them anymore, honestly. As a player, I ran into a cursed item once that I thought was funny. It's a sword that got fused in my hand. I couldn't let it go. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, difficult for my character to do anything because he was waving a sword around every time he moved his hand. People were terrified of him, but you know, it was
It's like an old school video game where you just walk around with your weapons out. Like Baldur's Gate did that, right? You just walk around with your weapons out all the time, just walking up to people like,
yeah.
"What's up? These are my swords." Can't walk around like that.
Or you really, really forecast that it's kind of a bad situation. You know, you're in a forest, you see the cobwebs up along the tree branches, you find a clearing, and there's a treasure chest sitting out in the middle of an open field with a sign in front with a picture of Admiral Akbar saying this is not a trap.
Don't forget, you gotta have like the god rays beaming on it as well.
Oh, yes, of course.
What is that cat under?
Also
that
at the cobwebs, I would have turned the fuck around. I don't deal with spiders. I don't deal with spiders in game or out of game. Cobwebs, we're turning back around.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go outside if I was in the D&D universe. Not when there's spiders the size of me.
Man, we fought phase spiders in my campaign I was a player in, and like I was failing the con saves against the poison that my DM was saying because I was like, "Oh God, please stop! No, no spiders."
Yep.
It's kind of like Heather with the snakes.
Yep, I was about to say, I get real trouble if I use snakes. I'm like, dude, you're in the jungle. There's gonna be snakes, and there's gonna be more snakes and snake-related things. It's the damn jungle.
You run into a bipedal snake with snakes for arms.
Yeah, it's very snake-like, but it's two very tiny
though.
appendages you can't see. Therefore, it's just a
That's
really
different.
long salamander. It's a
Because
salamander
that's the
with
thing.
very
Like
sticky legs.
ettercaps don't freak me out. You know, spiders that walk on two legs, those don't freak me out.
That's true.
But freaking spiders, doesn't matter if they're those small dog-sized fuzzy ones or fucking blade spiders, sword spiders. I can't deal with them.
Tolkien ruined it for everybody, man. He had that famous like run-in with a giant spider when he was a little baby, and he wrote his whole giant spider dungeon in the middle of Lord of the Rings, and now freaking giant spiders everywhere. It's awful.
It's terrifying.
Hey,
Yeah.
you leave that basilisk in that, bathroom drain alone. He was just chilling.
I was flipping through the Dungeon Master's Guide and I actually did not see a whole lot of cursed items, so I guess they're actually more rare than I thought. But I like the idea of turning like that into like part of a campaign too. Or maybe even you can unlock like new abilities on an item. Have anybody used like an item that can
Oh yeah.
like level up maybe or something?
Oh yeah. The
Yeah,
best ones are the ones that feed on souls.
Yikes.
Yep. You got a character who's a paladin, and your evil villain bad guy wants to turn that paladin to his side. Suddenly, the paladin wakes up, and there's a shining sword in the ground. He picks it up. It's like, ooh, this is fancy. I guess an angel gave it to me. Next thing you know, he's killing people, taking their souls, getting stronger, not realizing his alignment shifting, getting evil. Got a Gaius spell accidentally cast on him. He's just doing his thing.
Makes sense.
Yep. Every villain thinks they're the heroes. They're all lawful good in their own minds.
Yeah. I've actually had a lawful good paladin as a main bad guy once with that same mindset.
Nice. It's like Kalinar.
Yeah, basically, I'm enforcing the law. The law is the law, and you're going to follow it. And if you don't like it, you're going to lose a hand or a head.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds just like Booster Gold to me.
But Booster Gold's lame, though.
What
Booster
about,
Gold was cool. That'd be different.
to get us slightly back on topic, what about potions? How do you guys feel about potions? Do you give out potions of healing like candy? Is that a good loot option? Is it pretty rare?
I think you should definitely, I mean, not like 5, but if you're at a certain place, you should say, okay, you can have 5 of whatever types of potion, whether they're super or regular healing, all together. Because I think if somebody just has like 20 of them, you're like, well, they're just going to continue trying to die and just sacrifice themselves, and this is just going to be not fun. So, and then every other turn, they're just going to throw a heal, so it's just going to take longer. And so I think a limit is a good idea.
A limit where
it's always important to have. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's always important to have a limit for things like that, because that's definitely one of the downsides of some of the earlier versions. Is you could buy a wand of cure wounds, 50 uses of a cure wound spell that you could just, we just got beat up. All right, let me just use up this wand. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
And it really defeats the purpose of having a dangerous dungeon.
How do you limit stuff like that?
Yeah.
Just can't purchase those things very easily, or don't find them much?
It's just more expensive to buy in just limited quantities. That's how I usually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. If you're in Backwater, Faerun, a health potion is like something life saving. For a peasant with 4 hit points. That's literally the difference between life and death. And you got these super rich PCs roll up, want to buy health potions. People are gonna look at you like, "Are you fucking crazy?" No, I need that for when little Billy falls off the horse.
They need to socialize that shit, man.
You want a health potion? You better go make your own. It took our apothecary 2 weeks to make this health potion.
The D&D world's got to socialize their potions of healing, man. Everybody deserves free potions of healing.
Ooh, hey,
Instead, it's only the rich adventurers can afford them. It's bullshit.
Well, but that's why I usually do. You can only get health potions in like a major city, which depending on the setting, there might only be 1 or 2 of. Other than that, if you want health potions, you better whip out that herbalism kit and hope you know a druid, because you're gonna have to make them.
What about crafting potion? Bye, Adam. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Need to run. Yep. What about crafting potions? Is that a thing that players can do?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely, but it takes a lot of effort. Like they'll have to use a slot, or it is their entire turn type of thing. So, I mean, depending on what they're trying to do, I think if you're trying to resurrect your teammate, a fallen teammate, whether it's even just like a golem or a minion of yours, that should take just as much effort as making like a super healing potion type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but have that ability, because instead of having to completely retreat all the time, as I said, like with the with the limiting, this is like a spell slot. So that way you're like, okay, well, I can either attack again or we can heal and get the hell out. Like that's our two options here. So I think it's good if you can craft it, and it takes effort. Sorry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the thing that it takes effort. I've actually had a whole campaign like spin off in a random direction because they found an ancient tomb that had ingredients for an everlasting, like an immortality potion. But it took them to like another like campaign setting.
Oh wow!
I just rolled it up. I was like, oh, you guys found that. Well, we're going to call today's session.
I have some work to do.
Yeah, pretty much they went to freaking like the Far East to like an Oriental setting, and they had to find like the 8 potencies of everlasting life in order to create this potion. And they had to like kill like a celestial dragon. They had to kill like a Medusa and siphon the blood off. A bunch of random stuff that they had to do.
But that's loot
simple.
always serves as a good like motivator for players. Like
Yeah, it always is.
yeah.
They almost did it too, but then they had to kill a unicorn and grate its horn. And one of them was like, "Nah, we ain't doing that. You want to get hunted by every unicorn and for the rest of your life
Ever.
But I mean, like, yeah, if they wanted to craft like a potion, it would be, hey, okay, well, make the check. You want to craft a potion of hill giant strength, but you got to find a hill giant. You're going to need their heart as part of the ingredients. You're going to need like a toenail of this and the blood of that and the weed of this and the scale of this, and mix it together and under a full moon and the highest mountain in the Galapagos Islands or whatever. Mix it together and boom.
Yeah. I mean, even going back to what I was referencing before with the cobweb forest and the obvious trapped chest in the middle of the open field, I can see one of my players in my current group saying, "Is it trapped? Yeah. Is there loot? Yeah. Okay, open the chest."
Yeah, exactly. Come at me, bro. I want what's in that chest.
Yeah.
I'm just going to roll 10d10. Don't mind me.
Everybody needs that player in their group because you, as the DM, want to be able to unleash these things. Quit arguing over it.
You have a good doctor in your group that can do the same. So
Exactly. Very thankful. Yeah, I'm looking through. Xanathar's does have some rules for crafting items as well as it looks like brewing potions. So it looks like Wizards did finally say that, oh yeah, people do want to be able to spend money on magic items.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, being a druid or a rogue type of character I usually am, like, it's kind of necessary for that since they don't exactly have spell slots and casting abilities, so it's very useful for me, and I'm glad that they have all of those like upgrades, I guess you'd say, the leveling up and such. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful. We need more of that.
I know, yeah. I need to look back. I had such a unique campaign right now where the players do not have the resources or access to, like, towns or cities that they can actually do any of that in. So they're up to the mercy of just, hey, this is all the bundle of gold you get. You got a pirate ship? Oh, sorry, you don't have any means of actually turning it in for the reward money. Oh, well.
Right. So.
All right. Any final thoughts on using loot and magic items in our games? Sean, let's start with you.
I think the one caveat I would do in terms of crafting is do it with like a GM approval for the item. It's like, okay, I want to craft this cloak of displacement. Let's see, what does it do? Oh, it gives all attacks against you disadvantage. That's a no.
Yeah.
Team approval and everything. Nick, magic
Yes,
items.
sir.
What are your thoughts?
Magic
Final thoughts?
items. Definitely.
Or loot in general.
If you're the GM of it, just make sure it's custom to the game. So if you have a lot of people who are going to play non-sorcery and non-casting type of characters, have some loot. But like, if everybody is some sort of magician, I think it would be okay to go ahead and buff up some armor and some weapons for that. So if you can make it more to whatever players are going to go for, that would be great.
Okay. Marcos, final thoughts on magic loot in our games?
I love them. Makes for excellent stories.
for it.
Makes for excellent drama. It can lead into all types of fun stuff. I mean, you can do a game without it, but I feel like in of itself, magic items and loot can tell an even bigger story. You know, Dungeons and Dragons is all about random dice telling their own story, but loot and magic items can tell a whole story of their own as well if you let them.
It should
And
really
a good
be
story, a really good story too.
it should really be Dungeons and Dragons and treasure, because that's really what everybody is
Yeah.
all about, is the actual treasure part of it.
Definitely.
I mean that is originally what D&D, you know, first edition is about. You go into a dungeon, you bring out as much treasure as you can, you build a castle.
Yep.
That is baseline D&D.
Agreed. All right, I think that will do it for this month's DM Roundtable. Thank you to Adam, Sean, Nick, and Marcos for joining us. I am Eric Watson. I hope to see you all again for next month's discussion. See you then.
Boom.
Bye. Later.
Tis fun, boss.
Yes.
There you go.